This is the ACT English NoRedInk Misplaced and Dangling Modifiers lesson. I'm going to go through all of the lessons that NoRedInk includes with the Misplaced and Dangling Modifiers. A lot of the slides are just repetitive, the same information, so I'll skip those, but I'll hit the ones that have useful new information. First slide here. As it shows, a modifier is a word, phrase, or clause that describes another word, phrase, or clause. For words, we can use this first example. At the concert, Gary sang loudly. Loudly is a modifier. It modifies the verb sang, telling how Gary sang. So it's an adverb. Recall, adverbs answer the questions when, where, how, or why. All right, for a phrase, we can use this one here. Lying in Claire's yard, the puppy needed a rest after a long game of fetch. Lying in Claire's yard is a participial phrase because lying is a participle, which is a verb, or it's a word that looks like a verb but acts like an adjective or adverb. And this whole thing is a participial phrase describing puppy. So it's acting as an adjective, which answers the questions which one, what kind of, or how much, or many. This tells which puppy, the puppy lying in Claire's yard. As far as clause, this is a clause in this sentence. Marissa, whom I care about very much, missed dance rehearsal last night. It's a clause because it's a group of words with a subject and a verb. And that's how a phrase differs. Remember, it's a group of words that is missing at least one of those elements. So, whom I care about very much, I, subject, care, verb, modifies Marissa. The whole clause acts as a modifier, describing Marissa, which Marissa, the Marissa whom I care about very much. Okay, notice that in each of these examples, the modifier, whether it's a word, a phrase, or a clause, appears immediately before or immediately after the word, phrase, or clause that it modifies. When the modifier is not next to what it describes, it is usually misplaced or dangling. And that's a trick they use a lot on the ACT, so be aware. All right, slide 2, here's another example. Last week, Gary bought a green apple. Green is an adjective describing apple. It's a modifier, it comes right before it. Slide 3. The third slide introduces the term target for the word, phrase, or clause that is described by the modifier. Also gives examples of misplaced modifiers, which is when modifiers are placed too far away from their targets or misplaced. For example, Glenn took down the shutters painting the house earlier. Now, painting the house earlier is placed next to the word shutters, so it makes it look like it's describing the shutters. And the shutters were not painting the house, though. Glenn was. To fix this, move it next to Glenn. Painting the house earlier, Glenn took down the shutters. So, remember, painting here is not a verb. It's a participle, ending in ing or ed usually. It's a word that looks like a verb, comes from a verb, but it's acting as an adjective. It's telling which Glenn. Actually, well, okay, we'll go with what they say. Which Glenn, the Glenn is painting the house earlier. All right, slide 4 does not present anything new, so we're going to skip over it. Slide 5 introduces the concept of a dangling modifier, which is when a modifier's target is left out of the sentence completely. So, in this case, in the lounge chair, the lamp made Josh's reading easier. Well, what is in the lounge chair describing? It should be Josh. You'd think it'd be Josh, but in this sentence, Josh is a possessive, and a possessive is an adjective describing reading. Reading is the noun here. So it's not describing the lamp, it's not describing reading, it's not describing made. The target's not there. To fix it, rework the sentence completely. In the lounge chair, Josh could easily read. Now in the lounge chair is modifying Josh, which was not in the sentence earlier. So Josh is both in the sentence as a noun, and the prepositional phrase modifier is right next to its target. This is a prepositional phrase, by the way. In is preposition, chair is its object. All right, slide 6 doesn't introduce any new information. Slide 7 doesn't introduce any new information. Slide 8 has a couple of new examples, one using a prepositional phrase immediately after its target, the hat, on the table, and one using a participial phrase immediately before its target, playing in the yard, the kids ignored the rain. They're used correctly. Slide 9 has another good example of a dangling modifier. One last snow angel was made sitting in Kyle's yard. Now this, you want to make that work. The snow angel was sitting in Kyle's yard. I don't know. It's just very unclear. Actually, I think what they meant was while they were sitting in Kyle's yard, they made one last snow angel, but they are not in the sentence. What we'd have to do is actually add a whole clause, turn this participial phrase into a whole clause. One last snow angel was made while we sat in Kyle's yard. Here we add the subordinating conjunction, or SWABI as you all know them, the subject we, and the participle now turned verb sat to make this clause. So while we sat in the yard, there's not a dangling modifier anymore because you just got rid of the phrase completely. Okay, slide 10. This points out again that when a modifier both has a clear target in the sentence and it is close to that target, it is not a dangling modifier. Slide 11, nothing new. Slide 12, nothing new. Slide 13, nothing new. Slide 14, nothing new. Slide 15, nothing new. But slide 16 has another good example of a dangling modifier. Again, fixed by turning a prepositional phrase into a subordinate clause by adding a subject, I. So, where was it? There we go. After reading the study, the data was still not convincing. Who read the study? You have to put something in there. So you just put a subject. After I read the study, the data is still not convincing. Slide 17, another good example of a misplaced modifier. Mike ordered a chocolate-covered plate of strawberries. Makes it sound like the plate is chocolate-covered. So put it next to strawberries. Mike ordered a plate of chocolate-covered strawberries. Easy enough. Slide 18, another example of a misplaced modifier, but nothing new really. 19, nothing new. 20, nothing new. 21, nothing new. Okay, so that's all of them. I hope this helps. If you have any further questions, contact me on Hangouts.